Sorry we're late, everyone. It took a little bit longer to do my hair than it normal, so we have to make sure that it's perfect before we can come on. Right, Katie?
Yes, your hair looks fabulous tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. So as is yours. And I love the glasses.
Thank you. Thanks. We're having a glasses party tonight, guys.
Absolutely. Welcome everybody. I decided to come back for more. Last night I was really unsure if I was ever going to do this again. I got pushed to my limit last night.
Oh
But
no, what happened?
oh, what happened? I don't even know how to describe it. We had a flat Earth guy, Antonio Superats, and I'll give you an example. One question he was asked: "What's your idea of why, or what's your reason for why you don't think gravity exists?" And he says that, well, things fall, of course, but then if gravity was a thing, you wouldn't have trees, because if gravity's pulling something down to the Earth, the fact that a tree can grow and rise up doesn't make any sense.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, what can you do about that? But yeah,
So
anyway, welcome everybody.
the derp was strong.
Oh, it was bad. It was 2 hours. I finally had to just tell him to go. He had to leave. Like, I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. That was like my week with anti-vaxxers. So like I feel like you guys do a really good job with the flat earthers and I just hang out with the lunatic anti-vaxxers all week.
I got a lot of like hate mail from the anti-vaxxers, like more so than usual, because we deal with a lot of different subjects here, and we
Yeah.
make a lot of enemies by what we talk about. But
Yeah.
they're vicious, like super
They
vicious.
are. They love me. They love my page on
I'm sure.
Facebook.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
They like to call me
But
like ugly and stupid.
well, that's mean. You're not
I
ugly,
know.
not at all.
I mean,
But
if I am anything, I'm not ugly.
let me jump through a
Sorry.
couple of announcements real quick, and then we will get to this week in newsdom. Where do I start? Following this show, like I do every week, I will be with Jimmy, Mr. Atheist. We're going to be taking a look at a video called "The 10 Reasons Why Atheists Don't Believe in God." It is a minister who has put out a video with 10 very wrong reasons for why he thinks people are turned to atheism. So make sure that you stick around for that. And then following that, I will be in the Discord for a little bit. Last night was a lot of fun. We started talking about. I had shared a message I'd gotten last night, and the conversation quickly ran into. I'm just gonna put this out there. Just take with it for what you will. Sex and cereal, and then it went from sex and cereal to the problem with North Korea and and Ukraine. I don't know how you make that transition, but nonetheless we did. Tomorrow,
Well,
R and
naturally,
Ra.
it was because you love your cap or your cinnamon toast crunch,
Yes,
right?
yes,
That's where it
and
started.
I can never look at it the same now. I can't. It's I'll be having a bowl here in just a minute, though. You best believe that. Tomorrow,
I like Captain Crunch enough that I would probably have sex with it.
Captain Crunch is good. Captain Crunch is good.
Yeah.
Aaron Ra will be with us tomorrow with Dr. Grady McGurdy. Dr. Grady McGurdy is just like Kent Hovind, but a little more sassier. So that's going to be fun. And then next week we've got Cult of Dusty. JF's coming back to have a debate on slavery, and there's one more thing. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I left my calendar in my car, so that's good enough. We'll start with tomorrow with Aaron Ra and Dr. Grady McGurdy. Okay, let's get to this week in newsdom and see who is being stupid in the news. Dave?
So many people.
Well, we're live. Welcome to Non Sequitur. I'm Kyle Curtis. That's Katie Paulson. North Carolina schools are considering making 40% a passing grade. You can go ahead and pull back now, Dave.
Oh
Um, yeah. So this is
That's
my
where
state.
you
This is
live. That's
right,
your state.
right, right.
Oh,
Now,
does
now,
your
see,
state
I don't
think
know
it's because
about
you're like
you.
so?
I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be treated by a doctor that passed with a 40% grade.
well,
That's
here's my
just
thing.
me.
Here's my thing. Like I say on the show all the time about the issue with where we find ourselves in issues today is that, like with anti-vax or flat Earth, is that people fundamentally have lost the ability to think critically. They let the internet do it. They let posts that they see on Facebook influence them, but there's just not a whole lot of thinking going on, and that's why this pisses me off. And that it's in my state that they're going to lower the grade instead of like raising your standard. They're going to lower the standard and make it 40%. That's less than half. Anyway, let me read the story and then I'll get your take on it, Katie. But it says
I'm
North Carolina
listening.
legislators
I'm keeping an open mind.
are considering lowering the bar for the way schools are graded. A bill being considered by lawmakers would allow schools that score above a 39% by the Board of Education standard to continue operating. The current failing rate is 59% for all of schools. To make this happen, the board's new grading scale would extend the letters to A, B, C, and D to cover 15% as opposed to 10%. For example, earning an A grade now requires a school to score between 90% and 100%. If the bill passes, the school scoring between 85 and 100% would get an A rating. So they're basically just going through and they're just adjusting for that percentage. But that's
So
out.
this is
That's
a school rating, or this is like how they test kids? That's what
I'm assuming that they're talking about the school grading, but even still, like that's still generated by kids' grades, like what they get on their their aptitude test, stuff like that. That factors into what a school as a whole gets, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
it does.
Anyway, any time that you lower the standard for what you have, especially something with school, like school's important, education's important. In today's world, people are bombarded constantly with information all the time, information. When you're on Facebook, when you're on Twitter, no matter where you are, there are people sharing all kind of information. And I just feel like if we, in an age where information is rising and IQs now are going to be lowering, it's not going to be like that's not going to be beneficial for our society. Yeah. It just makes me angry. Why North Carolina? Why?
I mean, okay, I'm sorry, but doesn't North Carolina in general have a really poor public school system as it is?
Are you trying to say something, Katie?
Well, I only know this because my cousin and his wife moved down there, and she was an educator up in Minnesota, and she said that the schools in North Carolina are less than stellar.
Well, that's a good question. I can't answer that. I don't know what they rank. I know that we've got, like, as far as universities go, we've got UNC and Duke and which are really really good schools.
Yes, you have very good colleges.
Yeah, the shitty part now, if you're talking about like high school and stuff like that, the shittiest part about being in a rural place like I am and going to school is that if as the school grew and there was too many kids for the actual building, they didn't add on to the school. Because we're in the South, they were just like, you know what, we're just going to get trailers. We're going to park the trailers outside of the school. And so when you pull in to where I went to high school, there's literally looks like a trailer park at the very front of it. And that's not really a big issue, except for when you do tornado drills. Because if you can imagine, if a tornado come through, so as regular schools, people would go out in the hallways and tuck under, put your hands over your head, and wait for the thing to blow past. If you're in one of the trailer classrooms, your tornado drill consisted of you jumping out of the trailer and pushing the fucking thing to safety.
Oh God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go to story 2.
Oh my God.
All right. Story. Oh, you can't make this. You can't make this shit up. Son sets mother's home ablaze over Cheez-Its.
Oh my gosh. Cheez-Its are
Right,
good,
Dave?
but I don't know if I would actually set a fire for them.
No. This is in Atlanta, Georgia. A man had to rescue his mother from the second floor during a fire at a DeKalb County home that allegedly began over a box of Cheez-Its. The incident happened at the home of Creekford Drive in
Wait,
Lithonia.
DeKalb County, is that, where is that?
Yeah.
That's in Georgia. Okay.
Right. Correct. It's in Atlanta.
Okay.
Officials tell CBS 46 News that two brothers and their 61-year-old mother were at the home when an argument began over a box of Cheez-It snap crackers. That's when one of the brothers, who police say was intoxicated, locked his brother and mother inside the home and began pouring gasoline on the front steps. He then lit the house on fire, trapping the two inside. The other brother was able to lift his mother down from the second-story window and then get him out to safety. The man, who is 32 years old, was taken into custody and charged with arson and criminal damage to property. Now, my question on this, first of all, is he was charged with arson because he burnt the house down. He was charged with damage to property because obviously he damaged the house. Why was he not charged for attempted murder?
Yeah.
He locked them
Because it
inside.
was like impulsive, maybe, or
now I have to be honest because I feel like that's an important thing. If someone tried to come between me and my Cinnamon Toast Crunch, I could totally see myself setting some shit on fire completely.
Yeah. That might be how I would feel about me and M&Ms, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, you like M&Ms?
I love M&Ms.
I don't usually like M&Ms, but they came out with these caramel M&Ms. They're M&Ms with like caramel in the center of them. Oh man,
yum.
Those are amazing.
My son only eats two foods. My son eats Cheetos and M&Ms. That's all he eats because he has a feeding disorder, and so that's we always have them in the house. And so if my son didn't have his Cheetos and M&Ms, he would for sure burn a house down.
What kind of Cheetos are the big puffy ones or the real kind of thin crunchy ones?
The crunchy ones.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to number 3. Oh, this is a good one right here. Students are caught trading N-word passes during lunch at Churchill High School in the Potomac. All right, Dave. Yeah, wait till you hear this. Staff at Winston Churchill High School caught a number of students exchanging N-word passes during the lunch hour on Friday. The pieces of paper reportedly handed from student to student provided pass holders with the permission to use the N-word, whether the teenagers involved were joking or serious. And this remains a topic of hot debate. It's a joke that maybe went a tiny bit too far at most, said a sophomore who explained that 2 of his friends brought the passes to school. ABC7 has learned that the passes were not homemade, but rather printed copies of an online meme that depicts a yellow Willy Wonka golden ticket with the words N-word pass photoshopped on the image. So, what do you think about that?
So it's like a pass that says that it's okay to say the N-word? Is that what it is?
Right. Yeah.
That's horrible. What is it, 1800?
And it's interesting too because if you go on to continue to read, I'm not going to read all of it because it's very long. But it said that one student saw it and got offended. I am deeply disappointed and appalled that any student in our school would choose to engage in such a racist, hateful act. This behavior is disgraceful and does not reflect the values of the school. And then what's interesting is they were going around asking the parents of the students, and they said the principal here called this racist conduct. Do you agree with that? And one of the parents said, I do not agree. No one was trying to offend anyone. No one was saying the actual word, and no one thought it was okay to say the actual word. So if that's the case, then this is clearly racist, obviously.
Yeah. So where was this again? What state?
This is in, I believe, near Washington, D.C. Yeah, it's near the Potomac. Yeah, Washington D.C.
Every story tonight is from the South.
Oh, well,
All
are you
the
shocked?
stuff is
I'm
going on in the South.
I'm surprised that of all these crazy stories, none of them are from Florida.
I know. I was like, where is our Florida story?
Yeah, there's no Florida story. There's no Florida story here. It's not racist like like an overt way. It's because the only reason I say that is because it says in this article that this pass allows you to say it whether you were joking or not. Like no matter what the context you were using it in, it would make it okay to say that. But the fact that you have to make a word okay to say means that there's probably some negative connotation that's going to go along.
Right.
And
Well,
somebody's going to
this
use that.
yeah, and this kind of toes the line to me of like the places that, I think we talked about in the fall that like want to like retake the swastika. Some things just cannot go back because of like the history. And that word has been used to demean and to can keep people in a status that's less than them and to humiliate. That word really has no place in our society, and that is not, it is racist, whether they want to admit it or not. And if the parents are saying it's not racist, then it's the parents that are teaching their kids that it's okay to say this.
Mm-hmm. I agree. With that word, like, I've never felt the desire to say it. And I also don't have an issue with, like people in the African American community using it in their, hip hop or what have you, by trying to take ownership of that word. Like it's one of those things where I don't think it's up to me or anyone to decide like what gets done with that word. I just know that it shouldn't be used in a hateful context. If they want to, like hip hop songs and all that, completely fine with me. I don't have an issue with that. Trying to take powership over the word,
Well, yeah, but these are kids, and
yeah,
there's
those
like
kids,
a whole,
oh yeah, of
like,
course.
and I totally get what you're saying, because there's like a Tribe Called Quest song all about it and like taking the word back, and like I don't disagree that there is power in taking a word back. I mean, I love the word cunt and I think women should take it back. But I wouldn't want a man to call me a cunt.
Yeah, of course.
I also like the word bitch, so but don't call me one.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I think we've got one more story that's going to tie into what we're going to be talking about tonight. There we go. A diabetic teen dies after prescribed oils instead of insulin, and the herbalist is going to prison.
Barely.
All right, so we can pull back. Now, Katie did an article on this. I have linked it in the description for her on her blog with Pathos Without a Crystal Ball, where she goes into a lot of these sort of stories in detail, and we're kind of going to be focusing in on the horrors of can't even talk. Last night scrambled my brain. Holistic healing and alternative medicine. I'm gonna let Katie mainly take it away here in just a second to go through this story, but these things with oils, and when we talk about like Jilly Juice and Sunkist Danny, the guy who drinks turpentine, these people are extremely predatory, and in a lot of cases they're preying on people who are in a like a really tight spot. They might be desperate. Everything else has not worked, and they're out of options. And when people are vulnerable like that, to me, I think it takes an extremely disgusting human being to be able to prey upon these people with junk medicine that has never worked, and there is no factual basis by which any of these claims are substantiated. And I think this is an example of why it's important that you, even though if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is, and you should always take the advice of a licensed medical professional that can guide you through your health, and not somebody on the internet that has all natural whatever else attached to their name, and they don't have any kind of accreditation. So
all natural dirt.
Right. All natural dirt. I'm gonna let you take us through this story piece by piece, and see if we can get through it.
Okay. So this is like, and I'm going to say like a lot because the story is going to be hard to get through, you guys. It's not, as a mother of a child that's sick, this is a tough one. So Edgar Lopez was 13 years old, and he was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. His mother and father are, so to give you a little bit of background, his mother grew up in Mexico, and I'm not sure if his dad did too, but this took place in, what state was this in? Arizona? California.
This is, California.
California. Okay. So his mom grew up in Mexico, and then his dad, I think, might have too. So they're like immigrants to the United States. And when Edgar was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, he actually used a pediatric endocrinologist to help manage his blood sugars, and he went on insulin. And then there was like this period of time where he went into a honeymoon period, and it's like not uncommon when someone's first diagnosed where their pancreas might work a little bit and then the blood sugar will like normalize, and so they take them off of insulin. But it never lasts, because eventually the pancreas will completely like conk out, because type 1 diabetics don't make insulin. So the doctor said, while he's in the honeymoon period, we're going to take him off of insulin, but eventually it will get back to a point where he needs to go on insulin. So during the time that he went off of insulin, Edgar's mother decided that she was going to just do some holistic things to help and hopefully extend the honeymoon period. So she put him on some supplements, and she ended up going to a seminar for a master herbalist named is it Thomas Morrow? I think it is. Is that his name?
Timothy Morrow.
Timothy Morrow. Was it? Timothy Morrow?
Timothy. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she goes to the class.
Can you not hear me?
Timothy. I can.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Sorry. Here, I'm going to take off my glasses here for a second. Okay. So she goes to the seminar, and through his classes, he teaches her that like he can basically treat anything, and he's got supplements for everything, and he's got YouTube videos, and he sells this like supplement that's supposed to like help the pancreas, and you can use a combination of his herbs with some Reiki, reflexology, which is like massage, and some oils. And through all of these things, you will be fine. And we will cure your son's diabetes. Okay. And so the mother, this entire time, he's kind of grooming her. And in court, she actually testified that growing up in Mexico, she became, she was like sort of used to sort of these natural healing methods and these allopathic methods. So this wasn't really outside of like what she grew up in understanding. But Timothy was actually super good about grooming her and really getting in her head that hospitals are for profit, designed to keep you unwell, that insulin is poison from the devil, that he said he literally owned God's pharmacy, and he had God's medicine. And he really like sort of played on this woman's relationship with God to brainwash her to stop using her son's endocrinologist.
Sounds like a good Christian man.
Correct. Yeah. During this time, though, she doesn't stop seeing her son's pediatrician. So it's weird. It's very bizarre, to be honest. So Edgar ends up getting really sick, like super, super sick. And instead of calling the doctor, he calls Timothy, the herbalist, and it was like telling him about like what his symptoms were. And he was, he's having problems breathing, and he's very fatigued, and he doesn't have any energy. And he's just very like, he begged his mom. He said like, Mom, can you call 911? Can you get an ambulance? Like, I want to go to the hospital. And so she calls Timothy instead, and Timothy's like, oh, no, 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 don't take him to the hospital. He's fine. I'll come over and look at him. And so he comes over, and he's like, this kid is literally like in diabetic ketoacidosis, which means like his blood sugar is really, really high, and the blood acid, like the ketones in his blood, is like becoming acidic, which eventually can kill you. So he's in diabetic ketoacidosis at this point, and what would help him would be insulin. And he says, no, 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 don't give him insulin. Insulin is bad. Insulin is from the devil. Like, let's use these herbs. Let's use this oil. And so he tells the mom that he can look into the patient's eyes and diagnose through his irises what's going on, which, that sounds super legit.
Real quick, Katie, there's someone in the live chat that wants to know how old Edgar's brother was at the time of death.
Edgar was 13 when he died, but I'm not sure. His brother Daniel, is that what they mean?
He didn't say Daniel specifically. He just said he just wanted to know if you knew when his brother died. Or, I mean, how old his brother was when Edgar died.
Edgar, okay, so Daniel's older. I don't know if Daniel is, like, how much older than he was. I think he was an adult, like a legal adult, but he still lived at home. But that's not, if you know anything about, like, Mexican culture, that's not uncommon for children to stay at home even after they've turned 18. So I want to say he was like 18 or 19 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So Daniel is there, and then his mom and his dad. And so Timothy is like looking into his eyes, and he was just like, okay, I have it figured out. All you need to do is lightly massage his back and rub some lavender oil on him. And like,
that really pisses me off. You know what I mean? Like,
I know, right?
Okay. People, I just don't. I'm going to try to rein it in so I don't go off like I did with the anti-vaxxer person. But and plus, my blood pressure has already been raised way too much this week, so I'm going to try to keep calm tonight because I have another stream to do, and I don't want to get too stressed out. But people should not have kids if they can't be able to distinguish between a crackpot telling you to rub oil and lavender on your child who has diabetes, which is a serious disease, and and something that has to be controlled under a doctor's supervision and with medication, including insulin.
Correct. And you have to have constant monitoring of your glucose throughout the day and insulin throughout your day. And if you don't manage it, it is life-threatening. But the beauty of, science and modern medicine is that we have gotten really good at learning how to manage it through insulin and through glucose checking.
There's somebody else in the live chat that says, Kyle, this is from Flat Earth Globalist. Kyle, my mom did the same thing to me. She had me on B17, silver water, and prayer circles to get God to cure my skin cancer. That's outrageous.
I know.
That is outrageous. Okay,
but
go ahead.
So here's what's probably the more outrageous part about this story. So if it's not bad enough that Timothy is like looking into their eyes and saying like, just rub a little bit of this oil on and rub his back and do some like, reflexology. Edgar starts getting worse, and he's like it's harder and harder and harder for him to breathe. And Daniel, his brother, is like super worried, and he's just like, his breathing is becoming more shallow, and he's having, he's struggling to breathe, and he's asking us
Hold
to
on.
go to the.
I'm getting some.
That's
Are you
my
here?
kid. And
Oh, okay. Cool. No, that's no problem. I didn't know if it was
sorry.
just me hearing. No, you're fine. I didn't know if it was just me hearing something or what. I was like, it sounds like somebody. It sounds like the radio. It's like somebody singing in the
No, my
background.
son is screaming through the
Yeah.
through the
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
wall. Sorry.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
So he ends up like saying to him, he's like, well, you know, he's getting worse. What should I do? And Timothy is like, well, he's going through a healing crisis. So this is good. In order for him to get better, he has to get worse. Does this sound familiar?
Yes, it does.
What
It
does
sounds
Jillian say? Jillian always says pain is healing, right?
same thing, right?
Yep.
You have to purge out your former you and the who you were before, and part of that manifests itself in pain.
Right. And then what does Danny Glass say? You have to go through die-off, right?
Die-off. Yeah. That's one good way to put it, though.
Yeah. So he says this is just a healing crisis. So what does Daniel do? Daniel's like, I'll go on YouTube and see what's up. So he goes on YouTube and he watches videos of other herbalists on YouTube, which also indicate that a healing crisis is a normal sign of getting better. So satisfied with that, Daniel's like, oh, I guess Timothy isn't lying. And then guess what? Edgar died.
Here's the thing with YouTube, right? 2 weeks ago, YouTube came out with a statement saying that they were going to stop recommending like videos that deal with stuff like this, whether it be the alternative medicine, flat earth, conspiracies, 9/11 truthers. They're going to stop pushing that content. And I think it's a great idea after hearing stories like this, because like you just said, somebody was able to come on and watch a video that it's confirmation bias. You know, you search for the videos that you want to look at, and you hear someone else tell you that, oh yeah, I've been there, I've gone through that. It's fine. You'll get through it. And when you mess around with it, people die. And how long did it take Edgar from the time that he was either diagnosed with this or he found out about his ailment and should have gotten treatment to when he died? Like, how long was that? Do you know how long that timetable was?
Yeah, it was 3 days from the time he got sick and he was asking his mother to call 911 to the time he died.
And what pisses me off, like what makes me really angry, is that shit like this is preventable. Like that kid had a life ahead of him, a full life ahead of him. All he had to do was go somewhere and get a shot and monitor it and stay on top of it. But instead, unfortunately, he was born to a garbage human that should never be in the same room as a child, let alone raise one.
Yeah, and so this is like really the fundamental question here is the mother's playing this victim card and saying that Timothy brainwashed her. But at some point in time, she did use an endocrinologist and she was doing what she was supposed to be doing. So clearly what Timothy did was wrong. And like, I agree he should have been prosecuted, which he was, but he really didn't he got a slap on the wrist, you guys. He ended up pleading, he went through a full trial and he ended up getting like a misdemeanor of practicing medicine without a license. And then like, he got a mistrial, the jury deadlocked on his charge of child abuse. And so the judge declared a mistrial on that charge. And then after that, a couple of days later, he agreed to a reduced charge of like child abuse with the prosecutor, and they gave him a 120-day prison sentence.
Oh man, let me, Katie, real quick. Let me address something in the chat real quick before we get too far away from it. Brent Barron, when you say that, please stop lumping 9/11 truth in with all the other quackery. You need to talk to YouTube about that. It wasn't me that was lumping anything with anything. That was a specific example of the conspiracies they were going to stop recommending. So you need to take that up with YouTube. They specifically named 9/11 truthers by name with flat Earth and anti-vaxxers. So
the people that deny 9/11.
Yeah.
They should be. It happened.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm just saying he said stop lumping them in with all the rest of them. I guess he was thinking that this was an example that I made or something, but it wasn't. It was YouTube's example.
It's still a harmful conspiracy.
Of course, yeah, we agree.
It should be lumped in there.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, 100%. I just want him to know that I just want him to know that he this is something that YouTube mentioned by name. Like this is something that they considered harmful to on their platform. So I just wanted him to be aware of that.
Come on, the same people that believe that 9/11 didn't happen also believe that Sandy Hook didn't happen. So of course it's dangerous. And
absolutely it is.
And thousands of people died. So yes, it's harmful.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So he got 120 days in jail.
Yeah, he did. He's absolutely not going to go to prison. That's going to be county jail.
That's outrageous.
And he has to take down his YouTube videos. And he has to take his website down. And he has to pay restitution to the family for their funeral and legal expenses, I believe.
Why is that the case?
Practicing medicine without a license is a misdemeanor. And unless they have, it's a misdemeanor.
That's
Are you kidding me?
To me, that's like.
Are you shitting me?
No. I actually, and I know this because I spoke on the phone with an investigator from the attorney. I spoke with an attorney general from Mississippi, and it's a misdemeanor to practice without a license. And so most of the time, in order to really prosecute these cases, what they end up doing is going against them for like mail fraud or wire fraud, because they can get like longer prison sentences, because like each mail fraud charge is usually like a 10-year sentence.
Listen, I have a charge. I have a felony on me for cocaine for
I know
personal. So you mean to tell me this guy, this piece of shit, directly caused the death of a child?
Yep.
And he gets 120. I spent a year in. And he goes for 120 days. What the fuck is wrong with this legal system? Seriously. Why would you not make when you're crafting these laws? Why would you not make impersonating somebody in the medical field a felony? Obviously, that's going to have damaging repercussions. Somebody that's impersonating a doctor. There's only one reason you do that, and that is to give it some form of advice, or try to dispense something. What? Oh man.
I know, and the FDA even has so they developed a lot of their like laws right now that go around supplements and the whole like world of like alternative health products was developed in the 1980s, before like social media and before the internet, and it was like catered to a specific product, but the alternative health market has exploded and taken advantage of the loopholes that are in there. And so even the FDA just came out like a week ago and so that they're completely changing how they're going to regulate it and developing like a multi-tiered approach in terms of like how things are going to change, because it's become so problematic, and it's harming so many people right now, and there's so many legal loopholes that there's just literally no way to prosecute these people outside of like mail fraud or bank fraud.
What about the mother? Is she getting charged with anything?
Not that I know of, and that's the part that is atrocious to me.
Oh man, this story is so frustrating. And
it is, and consider this. There's a mother that's in Illinois right now named Amber Hampshire, who was arrested after her daughter died in November from diabetes. And Amber didn't treat her daughter, and Amber was charged with manslaughter. So why is California not prosecuting, but Illinois is? That's the other problem, is there's no consistency in terms of how these crimes are charged from state to state even. And Amber's daughter also died from diabetic ketoacidosis.
How can you not? That is that at the very least. I mean, this I would want way more, but at the very least, neglect or something like that. She should be
Right.
charged with some form of child abuse, because she abused that child by not getting him the proper care for a condition that he had. That's fucking abuse. And I would go further. It's manslaughter, I think, what she did.
Well,
100%.
yeah, and even in court, you know, like that was Timothy's defense, and I think that was part of the reason why it was so hard to prosecute him, because, you know, when the mother took the stand and testified, they were like, did he put a gun to your head and like make you follow his regiment? You know, and she was like, well, his words were like a gun. Like,
Oh my
no,
God.
stop.
Oh my God.
So
How-
like the mom and the dad want to take no responsibility, and they literally are saying that they're brainwashed. And the prosecutor, for whatever reason, is like placating this family and like really like downplaying their role in it, which, you know, I'm a mother of a child that has life-threatening illnesses that we have to manage on a day-to-day basis. And if I decided that I wasn't going to treat it, you better believe my son's doctors would be like in my face, you know, like
yeah.
calling CPS. And so that's the other problem, is like, where were his doctors and all of the mandated reporters that were in this child's life that knew that he wasn't on insulin? Like, why weren't they
Right.
doing anything?
A question that I have, and you may have said it earlier, and I was trying to set something up for something else, but so forgive me if you did say this already. But is there a reason why she didn't take him to a regular doctor? Like, why she neglected to actually use insulin, or why she was against?
Remember, I said he was doing insulin and then he went into the honeymoon phase. And so
Mhm.
he had the pediatric endocrinologist. Might be
Mhm.
okay. My son has one of those. And if you know
Mhm.
anything about endocrinologists, they're extremely intelligent. They're always, and it's like one of the more complicated specialties, because you're managing all of the hormones in the body. And when he was first diagnosed, she used one, but then he went into a phase where his blood sugar normalized, which I said can happen when someone's first diagnosed with diabetes. And
Mhm.
then eventually the pancreas like shits out. But so what happened was the endocrinologist said, we're going to take him off insulin right now and just wait it out as long as his blood sugars stay fine. And it was like during that time is when she met Timothy.
Okay, so I didn't know if it was something on. You hear all the time about people who deny medical attention because of whether it be religious grounds or something like that. You know, like Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, they won't do blood transfusions.
Yep.
For that, and thankfully, in a lot of states, they're trying to pass legislation that will make that a thing of the past, where the state will step in, and you know, if the child's health is, or you know, life even is at stake,
Yeah.
then
So there's only a couple states in the nation
right.
that allow what's considered faith healing, and
Right.
Idaho is one of them. But in the state of like where I live in Minnesota, that would never fly. So
Yeah.
if a doctor got wind of that, they could call CPS on me, and my son could be removed from my home. And then you'll see cases like this where mothers will then say medical kidnapping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which it's not medical kidnapping.
We actually went over medical kidnapping on one of our first shows together. It was like the second show, I think.
Yeah, Nicholas Gunderson. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm looking at a stat here for the Jehovah's Witnesses and how many people
Have died.
yeah, or die a year. It's just going to take me a second to find this.
My son,
I was looking.
my son would have died in August if we would have followed that because he had heart surgery.
Well, I was reading. It was probably a year ago, probably roughly a year ago, where we did a stream with. Actually, this was Dave's first show with us too. We had Telltale Atheist and John Cedars on, and they're both former Jehovah's Witnesses, and we were kind of going through some of these things, and they sent me to a website that has these statistics like in detail, and I remember reading it last year, going, this is incredible. The numbers are like, here we go. I've got it right here. Okay. The actual statistics have never been published, but the following estimate is based on published data that would suggest that around 900 Jehovah's Witnesses die each year because of the blood refusal policy. It says that in the American Journal of Medicine, that studies based on 1,404 operations, mostly cardiovascular surgery and hip replacement, performed on Jehovah's Witnesses without blood transfusion, reveal that 1.4% of the patients died due to lack of blood as a primary or contributing cause of death. This means that every time a Jehovah's Witnesses has bloodless surgery, his chance of dying is 1% greater. Now, it then goes on to say that according to the American Association of Blood Banks, apparently 4 million participants received blood transfusions from 12.6. Well, that's just about the blood transfusions. So they're saying here basically 900 people a year die from this practice, this refusal to allow a blood transfusion, because the blood is the spirit, and you're not supposed to mix.
You're not supposed to put somebody else's spirit into your body.
Yeah. How? And you said that Idaho was an example of, like, to me, that's 900 people every year that are senselessly, essentially left to just die for no reason.
Yeah. So in Idaho, there's actually a law where parents can deny medical care for their children, and they have a lot of these faith healing sects where they don't they allow parents to, if it's within their belief system, they don't have to take their child to the hospital. And then if their child dies, they don't do anything to the parent. The parent suffers no consequences. And so there's been a push for several years by people to get rid of this law, because Idaho is literally one of the only states that has it. And earlier this year, a group that's been trying to get this law overturned, they placed 139 wooden baby caskets on the steps of the Capitol, because 139 babies have died children have died since 1970 when they instituted this, and those 139 parents were never held responsible.
Here's a really good example of why this, the guy going to jail, county jail for 120 days, and the mom getting off scot-free. When you have a child that was essentially killed here, there was a case in Missouri, I believe, of a teacher. And you can look this up. Her actual sentencing is on YouTube. You can watch her get sentenced and watch the words come out of the judge's mouth. Now, to his credit, the judge was very he was upset that he had to do this, but he didn't have a choice because of law. Yeah, because of law. Now, what had happened was that the kid, there was a 14-year-old kid that was in this teacher's class, and she let him grab her boob one afternoon. Okay. Now that act right there made they charged her with the sexual assault of a kid, and she was sentenced to life.
Mm-hmm.
She got.
I know we've talked about this case before.
I think we have. Yeah,
it's insane. I don't understand that, and granted, what she allowed to happen isn't great, but I don't know that warrants life in prison. And then in this case, they can completely deny medical care for the child, and then they, there's nothing, and this is like not uncommon, even when you see these like in the medical abuse cases for like mothers that have Munchausen by proxy. There was a case here in Minnesota recently where a mother was tampering with a feeding tube of her child, and like she was like at the hospital, and she like put too much water. She like diverted food out of the feeding tube and put too much water, and she caused her son to have like a grand mal seizure that like ended up getting her child put on like life support because it was so severe. And they had her on camera tampering with the feeding tube, and she was in court last week, and she pled guilty, and she was like crying and stuff, and like they're basically saying that she's probably going to get a stayed sentence.
What was she doing tampering with the tube?
She was like making him ill. Like she had Munchausen by proxy, and she was like making him ill, and she was doing it for attention. And in court, she said that she was doing it because she wanted them to fix her child, but she was causing all of her son's issues. And he was underweight, so underweight. And now they're basically saying that even after she pleads guilty, she probably won't even spend a day in jail.
That's bullshit right there. That's
right.
All of this is bullshit. Now I'm angry again.
So when you don't have any laws in favor of like, this is how when you become a parent, Kyle, and you don't have any kids yet. I don't know if you ever will, but if you do, it'll get even more angry once you have children, because you'll realize how unfair the justice system is to children and how many laws there are that just don't protect them.
I love kids. Let me just say real quick, I love kids. I just like to be able to hand them back, when they start to do the like pitching a fit and crying, I like to be able to go, oh well, here's your mommy, here's your daddy. You know what I mean? I'll during the day.
Totally. I'm in a really funny place with my son right now. He is like in this like anti-mommy phase, so he always tells me to go away. So I don't know. He goes, "Mommy, I want to be alone. Just leave me alone."
Oh,
he's sick.
Oh.
He'll
grow out of it. He'll grow out.
Mommy, leave me alone.
He'll grow out of it. He's in his rebellion phase right now,
I guess.
But yeah, you're right. They don't. The kids don't get taken into account a lot of times, and I don't know why. Like we have such stupid laws with in terms of drugs. Even let's take that for example. We punish drug addicts or people who get caught with drugs or whatever, and treat it as that's a criminal offense when it should be treated as a medical issue. The addiction should be treated, not just thrown in a cage and locked up. And so you have these people who go out and they'll either smoke some pot, do a little bit of coke, trip out on mushrooms, and we're locking these people up like crazy. And then you have people like these examples of people who are going out there and actively killing people, like taking lives, and they get nothing.
Right. Because what this all precipitates down to, though, like it all comes down to, I'm sure there's like some sort of thing in here where it all ties back to religious freedom. Because at some point in time, there was probably, religion not believing in medical care, right? And we're still like having to update laws constantly because of that. And, like you're just saying, like in Idaho, they don't have to give medical care if it's against their religion. And that freedom of religion is used a lot in terms of parenting. But what is neat is that some states are getting more like strict about that, and they're basically just saying like, you being religious doesn't give you the right to inflict your beliefs on your child, because your child is not your property, and your child still has rights as a human to medical care.
Look at what the just to touch on the religious aspect really quickly. and then we'll start kind of winding down, and I'll read the super chats because I have to be out of here by 10 till to flip over for the next show. But I'm going to give you some examples of where religion has influenced the law. When people say, why can't you just let me us believe what we want to believe, and you believe what you want to believe, and go about the way things are. And if that was the case, that would be one thing. However, the reason I consider myself an anti-theist, these are good examples of one. You, as if you're a believer, you vote based on people who share that common conviction, right? And your holy book has laid out certain things that are ridiculous and could potentially create the situation like we talked about here, where you can deny medical treatment on the grounds of religion. In the 50s, or up until the 50s and 60s, you couldn't marry. It was illegal to marry someone of a different race than you. When we were talking about this a couple weeks ago with me and Jimmy, there were so many states in this United States up until the 70s, I believe, was when they really started turning these around, where it was there was no such thing as marital rape. They had statutes that protected rapists who were forcibly having sex with their spouses. They were raping their spouses. There were laws put into and protections put into place for these people up until the 70s, and finally they smartened up and took that out.
Well, but why until recently wasn't gay marriage a thing? Because of religion. Right. Why is it so hard to prosecute rape for women still? Religion. Why is it that women still, despite our own equality, are we not included in the Constitution? Religion.
And one of the biggest issues to me, I think, is what's going on in Africa. You have the Catholic Church that's has this stance on condoms and contraceptives that's archaic and it's just completely it's harmful to a degree it's just shameful. They're watching millions of people die of a disease that is just excruciating, and they're fine to just watch.
And it hits your community at a level that it hits no other. And so I'm sure it's something that's very dear to you.
All they would have to do, is say this. All they have to do is say, you know what? Condoms are fine. If you're gonna have the sex, if you're gonna sin, you might as well do it safely. Or we don't want, just come out and just say, no, the Lord is against condoms. That's just, it's just shameful.
Well, and then
it's absolutely shameful.
Think of what that does to a woman, and think of and I actually was just talking about this on my own live on my Facebook page, is that the reason why women are second-class citizens in the United States has absolutely nothing to do with secularism. It has everything to do with the Bible, and it has everything to do with the founding beliefs of our Protestant forefathers that believed that women don't have an equal say. I mean, for God's sake, we're not even included in the Constitution. Women don't have the same amount of equality, and that all comes back down to religion, because in the Bible, who is subservient? It's God, then man, then woman. And, in the Catholic Church, in every church, the woman's role is to be the mother, to have the babies, to stay at home, and the man is the provider. And in church, you hear about how the man is the leader. And every part of our society is designed around that for women, which affects our pay, which affects our maternity leave. I mean, the United States has the lowest maternity leave rates. We have a worse maternity leave rate than Afghanistan.
Well, lucky for you though, now we finally have the savior of that cause, because we have Beyonce now, and as long as Beyonce is here, then don't roll your eyes at Beyonce. That's blasphemous.
She's vegan now. She's so annoying.
Oh, she's amazing. Oh, she's amazing. She slays.
Faye.
How can you
She
not
does.
like Beyonce? How can you not like Beyonce?
But she does
She
nothing to
slays.
change, like she's doing nothing to change the feminist movement. I mean, she's doing nothing to improve our pay and
She's too
any of
busy
that.
slaying. She's too busy
Oh,
slaying.
well, I guess.
Well, let me pull up super chats. Anything that you want to say to close us out before I have to dip out? I'm gonna pull these super chats up, and while I'm doing that, you can kind of wrap up any thoughts you want to.
There is just so many of these cases out there, and I do cover a lot of them on my blog. And then I've been doing more like lives on my Facebook page to get more engagement, just to like interact with people. And so if you're interested in, diving into more of these types of stories, come over and watch my lives. I actually just did one this afternoon where I talked about a grandmother who killed a baby of her daughter after she had the baby because it would like shame the family because the daughter had sex outside of marriage. So, I mean, that's another indication of how religion is so effed up.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, this was a pleasure as always. Katie, thank you for being a part. And just if you have kids and you are religious, that's great. But just make sure that you do the right thing by your kids. It's one thing that you do with your health what you want, but you're in charge of that child's health, and to be so careless as to not give them the chance to have a life is just egregious. So
and I think as parents we need to stop looking at our children as property and recognizing that they have their own autonomy, and we should respect the rights that they have to healthcare. And remember that it's just because we're their parent, we can't inflict and like abuse our children with our beliefs.
The scary thing to me is that stories like this really make me worried about a world where 40% is a passing grade now.
Right.
And this is
the lowest common denominator of these things.
Be a lot more of these, I'm afraid. We'll be back on with. I'll be back on with Jimmy here in 10 minutes. You don't want to miss this. We're going to be going through a gentleman that has figured out 10 reasons why atheists don't believe in God. Let me tell you, when I say that you want to hear these, you want to hear these, because this man also has a video where he tells us why God's against witches as well. So if you want to hear why atheists don't believe in God and why you should never suffer a witch to live, bring it back here in 10 minutes. Thank you for joining us, and good night.
Good night, guys. Come hang out with me on Facebook.
Yay.